5 years ago, the world changed when the first superhumans appeared. They quickly established a new world order of power and excess. Meanwhile, the unpowered were left to build the world they lived in. The world's favorite pastime became watching the superpowered fight. This new reality fractured the world of mixed martial arts. First, there was the Abilities User League, a clash of titans. The crowds went absolutely wild for the superhuman carnage. And then there was the other league, putting its audience right to sleep. The Non-Abilities User League, a forgotten ring for regular humans. But one woman with a dangerous smile plans to bring it back to life. She reflects on the league's debt, seeing only the short-sightedness of others. Because where others see a dying sport, she sees a path to victory. She gazes down at the ring, her grand ambition taking shape. And success in this world is measured in one thing: cold, hard cash. But her plan hinges on a fighter whose purpose is crystal clear. A new challenger enters the ring, oozing with confidence and a taunting smile. His arrogance knows no bounds, offering to fight with just his left hand. Her secret weapon is this banned fighter, whose very presence enrages his opponent. He strikes with blinding speed, chiding the veteran for not even raising his guard. But instead of breaking him, the taunts have ignited a dangerous fire in his eyes. The veteran's rage is met not with fear, but with overwhelming force. The challenger lands a brutal blow, mocking the veteran's futile anger. From the stands, his new boss watches, her plan unfolding perfectly. Bloodied and grinning, he seems to feed on the violence he creates. He hammers his opponent into the mat with pure, unrestrained savagery. We learn his name is Hwang Kwang-ho, a former champion with 49 wins. But his career ended in a permanent ban, a warning to the entire league. The crowd's hatred for him is palpable, a chorus of insults and fury. He basically told them their booze couldn't be deposited at the bank. And his dirty fighting style was legendary for all the wrong reasons. And it was a single notorious incident that got him banned for life. But for his new boss, that controversy was exactly what she needed. Because whenever Hwang Kwang-ho fought, every metric went through the roof. She knows his outrageous behavior isn't random, it's a calculated performance. He's a natural-born showman, a genius at capturing the public's eye. However, there's a slight problem with her perfect weapon. Back in the present, her starfighter is just laughing at his phone. He's been completely absorbed like this ever since his comeback match. Finally, she's had enough and demands to know what he's doing. His response is a smug claim that he's conditioning, whatever that means. Her patience has officially run out, her teeth gritted in pure frustration. She reminds him he was hired to boost ratings, not to waste time. Unfazed, he pulls her in to show her his phone, revealing his conditioning. On the screen is the top trending post: a fighter versus 500 grandmothers. She stares in stunned silence, unable to process the sheer absurdity. As she finally erupts in fury, he just points and laughs at her outrage. He cackles, admitting that he would absolutely pay to watch that fight. A horrifying realization dawns on her. Maybe he really is just unhinged. She argues that a stunt like this could destroy the league's reputation, but Hwang Kwang-ho calmly explains the power of the platform they're on. She furiously argues that a bigger platform just means more garbage content. He directs her to a post asking who'd win, a pro with no powers or a powered amateur. Her eyes narrow as she scrolls, seeing a pattern in these bizarre hypotheticals. The post uses a legendary non-powered boxer as its prime example, pitting him against a super-powered rookie with only a couple of years' experience. The post has staggering engagement, with thousands of comments fueling the debate. As she reads the passionate arguments, her anger slowly turns into realization. And just like that, the unhinged fighter suddenly sounds like a marketing genius. She's lost in thought, wondering if his audacious idea is even possible. Meanwhile, Hwang Kwang-ho's focus returns to his phone, his expression uncharacteristically serious. He snaps out of his trance, asking where she's suddenly headed. She announces she's off to scout a superhuman, but he's more concerned about lunch. Her patience shatters, demanding he get serious and come with her immediately. They arrive at a gritty gym where fighters are honing their skills. The gym's coach greets them with a smile but flatly refuses their offer. Thinking it's about money, she sweetens the deal with a cut of the profits. But he clarifies that his refusal has nothing to do with the pay. With a calm gesture, he begins to explain his real concern. He explains that even without using their main powers, ability users are physically superior. A single blow from a superhuman could be devastating for a regular fighter. The coach stands on principle, refusing to let his fighters get hurt for money. But his moral lecture is interrupted by a massive, disrespectful yawn. Hwang Kwang-ho complains aloud about amateurs trying to act tough. The coach finally asks who this loudmouth is, and she introduces her secret weapon, His expression hardens as he recognizes the infamous name Huang Kwang-ho. But our boy just stares back, his gaze a silent, insolent challenge. His boss, however, can barely contain her glee at the rising tension. The coach tries to dismiss the provocation, lecturing about the noble purpose of abilities. Huang Kwang-ho scoffs, dismissing the coach's lecture as naive idealism. He then flips the script, asking if the coach is simply afraid of a real fight. As dusk settles, they walk away from the gym, their offer soundly rejected. She's confused by the coach's restraint, but Huang Kwang-ho recalls his noble excuse. She blames him directly, saying his antics sabotage the entire negotiation. He scoffs at her naivety, certain the coach just sees them as insects. He explains his method of goading people, but she abruptly orders him to turn back. She dismisses him for the day, declaring she'll continue scouting on her own. Her high opinion of his genius plummets as he celebrates an early end to his workday. He smugly asks if she's certain she won't come crawling back for his help. But instead of leaving, he sits on a bench watching her walk away. His playful demeanor vanishes, replaced by a cold, calculating gaze. He watches her leave, a condescending smile on his face as he calls her naive. Back at the gym, a mop and dustpan lie on the floor. A younger fighter approaches the coach, confused by his actions. The coach barely acknowledges him, lost in his own thoughts. He grips the mop handle with terrifying force, claiming he's just cleaning the filth. Meanwhile, his boss takes a much-needed break, her scouting mission a total failure. She sighs in frustration, lamenting that no one is willing to join her league. She checks the time, her phone's wallpaper showing a picture of her and her brother. The boy in the photo has intense golden eyes and a deadpan expression. As the evening fades, she sits alone, scrolling endlessly for a solution. But she stops in her tracks, refusing to accept defeat so easily. With renewed determination, she decides to go back and try one more time. She believes that despite his principles, the coach can still be persuaded. Arriving back at the gym, she calls out into the empty entrance. She announces her return, hoping for another chance to make her case. The building is eerily silent as she makes her way down the hall. Her sharp eyes scan the deserted training area, searching for anyone. She even brought a gift, because nothing says let's talk like free energy drinks. But her search is interrupted by a horrifying, unexpected sight. Out of the darkness, an unseen assailant strikes with brutal force. Her peace offering of energy drinks is sent flying through the air. She hits the ground hard, gasping for air as her throat is crushed. Her assailant is the coach, who sneers that the filth has returned. He lifts her like a rag doll and slams her back onto the cold floor. Dazed and broken, she struggles to even form a coherent thought. The hulking coach stalks toward her, his intentions terrifyingly clear. She desperately asks if this is because of Huang Kwang-ho's insults. But his face is a mask of cold, unyielding fury. She tries to apologize, pleading with him to just calm down. He scoffs, making it clear that her apology means absolutely nothing to him. But his attack is cut short by a fist wreathed in violent energy. The force of the impact sends a shockwave across the gym floor. Her vision blurs, the world spinning from the shock and pain. She can only stare in stunned disbelief, gasping for air. A new figure stands over the fallen coach, gesturing to the scene. A smug grin spreads across his face. He knew this would happen all along. The coach lies stunned, his self-righteous fury completely shattered. With casual disdain, Huang Kwang-ho delivers a brutal kick to his face. The self-proclaimed man of principle is sent reeling from the blow. And through the haze of pain, she finally recognizes her unlikely, unhinged savior. The coach brings his foot down with earth-shattering force. He roars in fury, promising to end this fight in a single blow. Huang Kwang-ho is sent flying back from the sheer power of the strike. He slides across the gym floor, struggling to regain his footing. The coach seethes, referring to our boy as nothing more than an insect. But Huang Kwang-ho just grins, asking if he was so scared he had to attack a woman. The accusation hits a nerve, and the coach's rage finally boils over. He unleashes his true power, because apparently 2 arms just weren't enough. His boss can only watch in shock, witnessing a 6-armed boxer for the first time. And she wonders how anyone could possibly plan to fight against, well, that. For the first time, she questions if her grand plan was ever truly possible. But Huang Kwang-ho stands firm, weathering a storm of 6-fisted fury. He mocks the coach, asking if all those extra arms are just for show. He even points out that the extra limbs don't add any weight to the punches. And with perfect timing, he lands a devastating blow of his own. He follows up with a brutal strike to the body, breaking the coach's rhythm. The self-righteous superhuman is sent stumbling back, completely off balance. With a sadistic grin, Huang Kwang-ho demonstrates what a real punch looks like. The coach can only watch in horror as the blow closes in. He roars that this is how you throw a punch, a lesson served with a concussion. The coach stares up in disbelief, his face a mask of blood and shock. He roars in defiance, refusing to be schooled by a regular human. But Huang Kwang-ho catches the punch, a smug grin spreading across his face. He notes that having extra arms just means there are more targets to grab. His boss watches from the floor, her mind struggling to comprehend the scene. The coach howls in agony as his superhuman body is broken by sheer technique. Huang Kwang-ho begins a countdown, holding up 5 fingers with a chilling smile. The coach's bravado evaporates, replaced by a dawning primal terror. He lashes out in a final desperate surge of fury and fear, but Huang Kwang-ho meets the attack with a serene smile, his own fist glowing. Wait, glowing? That's new. He continues his countdown, driving his glowing fist straight into the coach's chest. The superhuman's bones begin to snap under the impossible pressure. With each number, another one of the coach's extra limbs is systematically broken. The final count ends with a sickening crack, shattering the man's superhuman pride. The coach can only scream in defiance, calling him a worthless, insignificant bug. But Huang Kwang-ho just looks down at the broken man, asking what that makes him. He ends the lesson with one final, earth-shattering blow to the face. As the dust settles, our boy walks away, the brutal fight finally over. He turns back to his boss with a grim look, his point about superhumans now proven. All she can do is stammer out a thank you, her world completely upended. He begins to gloat, but she cuts him off, agreeing to scrap the plan. Her sudden agreement leaves even the great Huang Kwang-ho momentarily confused. She now understands that superhumans like the coach would never work with them. Overwhelmed and exhausted, she finally accepts the harsh reality of their world. But he scoffs at the very idea of cooperation, stepping toward her. She looks up in confusion as he moves away to check something. He reveals his phone, explaining his own method. Just make them angry. She can only stare, trying to process his chaotic new strategy. On the screen, a live chat explodes over a real-time superhuman versus human fight. He smugly admits he promoted the fight on that very forum this morning. He explains that with so many witnesses, this is legally just self-defense. And with a chilling grin, he calls this a great way to foster cooperation. He then turns to the camera, taunting every superhuman watching from the shadows. His boss can only watch in horror, realizing her savior is a madman. But his challenge echoes across the city, reaching a powerful new observer. Even in the quiet halls of a church, his words find their mark. And in the darkness, another powerful figure smiles, intrigued by the chaos. The live viewer count explodes, so much for needing a marketing budget. Huang Kwang-ho tells his future opponents not to bother practicing, he won't be. She finally snaps, screaming at him to stop this madness immediately. Huang Kwang-ho's challenge spreads across the internet like a virus. The online world is divided, with some calling him a fraud and others hailing him as a legend. His taunt has gone completely mainstream, now a headline on the city's biggest news broadcast. Below, a crowd of onlookers stops to watch the spectacle unfold. Among them, a woman with striking yellow eyes listens as people marvel at his genius for attention. They wonder what happens if he loses, but she seems to know something they don't. She believes this isn't just baseless arrogance. There has to be a plan. Her companion suddenly asks why everyone seems to be staring directly at them. Her gaze sharpens as she realizes the attention isn't on her, but on the person beside her. The entire street has turned, because live drama is always better than the news. The woman with yellow eyes reflects on the core of the conflict, the superhuman's arrogance, and the simmering resentment of the powerless masses. A conflict that has now been ignited into a raging inferno. Her gaze hardens as she focuses on the man at the center of it all. The entire world seems to be watching Huang Kwang-ho. Meanwhile, a young man with a face full of piercings looks profoundly bored. He complains that despite the uproar, no challengers have shown up yet. He's in the league office, sitting across from his boss, who looks utterly defeated. But then, a slow, unsettling smile suggests she's finally snapped. Her quiet chuckle erupts into maniacal laughter, catching the young fighter's attention. Her unhinged laughter settles into a chilling smile as she offers some good news. A document is slammed down with bureaucratic finality. Standing on her desk, she declares that he's been permanently banned again. But she seems more concerned with his sudden lack of formal address. Huang Kwang-ho just smirks, seeing no point in manners if he's already fired. Seeing he's not rattled, she decides to spell out the reality of their situation. In a flash, she's off the desk and moving right toward him. She throws an arm around him, informing him they're now partners in crime. But he calmly explains that she can't just wash her hands of this mess. He asks if she truly believes anyone will buy that she wasn't part of his plan. With a knowing smirk, he asks if this was her grand design from the start. He casually dismisses the question, asking if she's going to order them food. The weight of her situation crashes down. There's no way to prove her innocence. Trapped and out of options, she wonders what her next move could possibly be. And in that moment, her despair turns into fierce determination. Elsewhere, the name Huang Kuang-ho catches the attention of a serious young man. Back in the office, she warns him that if he loses, the public will turn on them. Her composure shatters as she demands to know his secret to victory. She clings to the hope that this chaos is calculated, not just crazy. She asks if he has any plan at all, and gets nothing but a blank stare. Her face contorts in horror, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. He calmly states that plans are irrelevant, all that matters is winning. He corrects her, insisting the coach was a pro, not some random amateur. He then chides her for her own lack of research into their opponent. And with unshakable confidence, he asks why she assumes he'll lose. A single tear escapes, a testament to her overwhelming stress and desperation. He makes a solemn vow, promising that he will never ever lose. His absolute certainty leaves her completely stunned and at a loss for words. He begins to put on his jacket, casually asking who his first challenger will be, but then dismisses his own question, calling all superhumans cowards for not showing up yet. But her train of thought is shattered by a sudden, violent impact. Both she and Huang Kuang-ho turn as the office wall explodes inward. A massive force sends Huang Kuang-ho flying across the room. Through the dust and debris, a powerful figure makes his entrance. A mountain of a man in a white suit has answered the call, asking who's the coward. He steps through the wreckage, his presence dominating the entire office. Huang Kuang-ho stares up at the challenger, completely unfazed by the size difference. The newcomer leans in, mocking our boy's size with a condescending sneer. Meanwhile, his boss laments that people really need to learn how to use a door. She watches the two men, sighing at the sheer idiocy of it all. Huang Kuang-ho demands to know the identity of the man who just wrecked his office. The challenger grins, introducing himself as someone who isn't a coward. His boss can only laugh, her sanity clearly hanging by a very thin thread. But Huang Kuang-ho is more than ready, asking if they should start right now. Surprisingly, the newcomer declines, saying he didn't come here for a fight. He taps his cheek with a smug grin, claiming he's just here for a conversation. Huang Kuang-ho looks utterly bored, questioning why he'd show up if not to fight. The man clarifies that their fight will happen in a proper arena, not some trashed office. But before they can make it official, he has one very strange request. He leans in close, daring Huang Kuang-ho to hit him right on the jaw. The office is silent, a tense standoff between the four of them. She desperately reminds him that they're partners, pleading for cooperation. She begs him to hold back, to not give in to the obvious provocation. But Huang Kuang-ho just scoffs, asking if she really thinks he's that predictable. A flicker of relief crosses her face, but the tension remains palpable. She holds her breath, hoping he'll actually listen for once. Believing she's finally gotten through to him, she lets out a sigh of relief. But he then asks why she's always giving him orders, as his fist flies. Her hope shatters in an instant, replaced by absolute horror. Because when you tell Huang Kuang-ho not to hit someone, he feels an overwhelming urge to hit them. He explains that when asked to hit someone, he feels obligated to hit them hard. And with that, he declares he's done taking orders from anyone. The blow lands with incredible force, distorting the challenger's face. But instead of staggering, the man in the white suit just takes the hit. He grins through the impact, mockingly asking if that's all he's got. Impressed by the punch, he officially proposes a fight in 10 days. Huang Kuang-ho smirks, appreciating that it's a request, not a demand. The challenger snaps his fingers, taking our boy's response as an acceptance. A contract is presented, ready to make this bizarre showdown official. Caught between two giants, his boss prepares to officiate the agreement. The challenger's companion explains the match will be an unofficial exhibition. She presents the contract, ready to finalize the terms of this bizarre fight. But Huang Kuang-ho intercepts it, taking the document for himself. He grins, admitting that paperwork isn't exactly his strong suit. His boss snatches it back, determined to check for any hidden traps. Her eyes scan the page, sweat beading as she braces for the worst. But she's stunned to find the terms are almost too good to be true. The woman in the suit reminds them that they're not exactly fielding other offers. Huang Kuang-ho's smirk suggests he couldn't care less about the details. The challenger and his associate watch, knowing they have them right where they want them. Huang Kuang-ho smirks, asking if they're the ones behind this little trick. But instead of signing, he defiantly marks the contract with a giant X. He flings the document back, accusing them of trying to pull a fast one. The challenger catches it with ease, his expression one of mild amusement. With a glare, Huang Kuang-ho announces that he accepts the fight anyway. The man in white considers this, a slow, calculating smile spreading across his face. He warns our boy not to get too complacent just because he's young. His boss tries to restrain him, a job that should definitely come with hazard pay. The challenger decides it's time to leave, promising to see them at the arena. But Huang Kuang-ho gets the last word, telling him to use the door on his way out. The challenger smirks, promising he'll remember to use the door next time. He reaches for the doorknob, feigning a moment of civility. But instead, he rips the entire door clean off its hinges. He then exits through the original hole in the wall, because consistency is key. His associate calmly tells them to send a bill for the damages. The two partners are left standing in the absolute wreckage of their office. Wang Kuang-ho is thrilled, seeing this as a reward for his promotional efforts. He turns to his boss, expecting her to share his excitement. But she can only stare into the abyss, her spirit completely broken by the chaos. Elsewhere, a conversation reveals this month alone has brought 27 damage claims. Elsewhere, the challenger's associate frets over the mounting damage claims. But her boss dismisses her worries, telling her not to sweat the small stuff. He begins to explain the hierarchy of their league, where black is the highest rank, a privilege granted to only 3 fighters, including the man himself, Terminus Paul Ronnie. We're shown a flashback of one of his previous opponents, a man of intense focus, and we learn exactly how Paul Ronnie earned his terrifying nickname. He watches his opponents unleash their full power with a chilling, predatory smile. A fighter with the power of pure flame stands ready to strike. And in the next moment, he's reduced to nothing but smoldering ash. Because every single person who has ever stepped into the ring with him has met the same fate. A single devastating blow sends the flame wielder reeling. Because every fight against Paul Ronnie ends at the same destination, the terminus. The superhuman's consciousness drifts in a void of pure white. He's completely disoriented, unable to comprehend what just happened. But reality comes crashing back as he's slammed into the canvas. The impact leaves a crater in the ring, a testament to Paul Ronnie's power. The referee rushes in, but the fight was over before it even began. Back in the present, his boss watches the brutal highlight reel on her computer. She finally understands the kind of top-level monster they've just challenged. The generous contract was a trap, and she's just walked right into it. The internet has already started a grim prediction, the Huang Kuang-ho death count. She finally understands the true purpose of this match from the very beginning. It was never meant to be a fight, it was a public execution. And the countdown to that execution has officially begun. The public backlash is immediate and vicious, a storm of pure hatred. She knew his antics would lead to this, a disgraceful media circus. 10 days later, on what the world is calling Execution Day, the stage is set. She knows all the hype he's built is fragile, resting on this single fight. A loss here means not only losing the match, but losing all the attention he's garnered. She can only watch, silently pleading for him to somehow pull through. Her mind paints a grim picture of the fight, a lone warrior against a towering god. She imagines the final brutal outcome of this public execution, a vision of Paul Ronnie standing victorious over the broken body of her fighter. Back in the present, she sits at her desk, crushed by the weight of her mistake. Her despair hardens into a single desperate thought: this match cannot happen. With only 9 days left, she knows she has to find a way to stop it. Her mission is to find any loophole that will allow her to terminate the contract. But her quiet scheming is shattered by a man screaming bloody murder. She looks over, already exhausted by whatever fresh hell Huang Kuang-ho has unleashed. It seems his promise not to train was a lie, and the press is absolutely furious. The press calls him a despicable liar, and he calmly agrees it's his specialty. He offers a mocking apology, complete with a peace sign for extra salt. His boss can only stare, her brain clearly short-circuiting from the madness. She finally steps in, only to be mistaken for his secretary. Ouch. Her authority is completely ignored as the reporter claims they have permission. It turns out her starfighter personally invited the entire press corps. She's horrified to learn she's the last to know about her own office's press day. She struggles to understand what kind of interview he could possibly be giving. The sun sets on the city, oblivious to the dumpster fire unfolding in her office. She stands outside, completely overwhelmed by her partner's latest stunt. Her mind is consumed by one thing: the match against Paul Ronnie. Meanwhile, Huang Kuang-ho is indeed training, his fists a blur of motion. She bursts in, ordering him to stop, but he just questions her authority. Later, he puts his feet up, asking what she wants while filming her reaction. He mockingly explains that he's just doing a little training. She reminds him of the ticking clock, demanding he get to the point. But he just keeps filming, capturing every moment of her growing frustration. Her eye twitches, the realization dawning that she's become part of his show. She finally snaps, pulling out a stun gun and declaring this has to stop. Huang Kwang-ho just looks down, his expression one of mild curiosity. She admits she let him treat her like a figurehead, hoping for results. But now she says they've reached a point of no return. Gripping the stun gun, she declares she can't let his impulsive actions continue. He casually dismisses her concerns, but she screams back in pure desperation. She lays it all out. The match is a setup, and Paul Ronnie is a top-tier fighter. It makes no sense for a monster like him to fight a non-powered human, but his only response is a cold, dismissive question about her point. Her despair finally hardens into a single burning resolve. They must win. She declares that they've come too far, and victory is the only path forward. But Huang Kwang-ho just looks bored, as if she's discussing the weather. She pleads with him one last time, asking if he truly has no plan at all. He finally turns to her, and a spark of hope ignites in her eyes. But his grand strategy is revealed in a single chilling word: lose. She can only stare back, her mind refusing to accept his answer. He complains that 10 days isn't enough time to beat a monster like Paul Ronnie. She asks the obvious question: why did he even accept the fight? He explains that refusing would have just made him look like a coward. He then leans in close, his playful demeanor gone once again, and whispers a new plan that fills her with absolute bone-chilling terror. As he walks away, she's left to process the terrifying new reality of their partnership. She can only ask if this was his insane plan from the very beginning. 6 days later, the roar of the crowd fills the arena on fight night. The commentators hype up the impossible clash between powered and unpowered. But they reveal there's another twist, leaving his boss completely bewildered. A fighter steps onto a scale next to a mysterious blue bucket, for reasons. In the ring, a massive, bald superhuman faces off against his challenger. The announcer introduces the hulking fighter as the star of a recent controversy, and the challenger is none other than Huang Kwang-ho, taunting his new opponent. From the stands, his boss watches as the announcer calls for the moment of truth. Her expression is a mixture of shock and dawning horror. She finally asks if this was his insane, convoluted plan from the start. She tries to make him understand that if they lose, it's all over for them, but Huang Kwang-ho just grins, saying that's exactly what he's counting on. Her spirit breaks, realizing she's trusted a man who is completely clueless. He lets the silence hang in the air, watching her complete meltdown. He then asks if she's ever met a truly despicable person in her life, and follows up by asking if she wouldn't want to see that person get their comeuppance. He clenches his fist, the final piece of his plan clicking into place. With a demonic grin, he says he wants to see that very person get beaten to a pulp. Because people forget what they like, but they never ever forget what they hate. The referee gives the final command, the two fighters ready for battle. From the sidelines, his boss watches, her terror giving way to understanding. Because if you're going to make the world hate someone, the referee's hand hangs in the air, a moment of pure, agonizing tension. And as it falls, the fight officially begins. Huang Kwang-ho explodes forward with impossible speed, closing the distance instantly. The first blow lands before the superhuman can even react. You have to give the audience a reason to cheer for their downfall. His fist is already bloodied, a testament to the force of the opening strike. The hulking superhuman is sent staggering back, completely caught off guard. He remembers this feeling, the unforgettable impact of a perfect strike. The commentators worry about a disqualification for the illegal first blow, but they quickly realize that the rules are the last thing on anyone's mind. His boss holds her breath, finally seeing the true purpose of this madness. Because Huang Kwang-ho has just made his debut as the villain, and business is booming. She stands alone in the darkness, a silent witness to the chaos she helped create. The crowd erupts in a symphony of shock, outrage, and pure disbelief. A grim understanding settles on her face. There is no turning back now. The entire arena is on its feet, their emotions a chaotic storm. And as trash rains down, she's completely overwhelmed by the pandemonium. The empty corner of the ring stands in stark contrast to the chaos. The referee can only stare, his face a mask of pure disbelief. His mind struggles to process the blatant disregard for the rules. But Huang Kwang-ho is absolutely reveling in the pandemonium he's created. The official tries to stammer out a command, to regain some control. But our boy simply holds up a hand, silencing him with a casual gesture. The referee points out the obvious. That was a clear and illegal foul. Huang Kwang-ho's smirk only widens at the accusation. He tells the man to just give up on trying to enforce the rules. He then taunts the official, practically begging to be disqualified for his actions. He openly asks if his blatant foul is enough for a disqualification. But before the referee can answer, his opponent's corner rushes the ring. They swarm him, turning this one-on-one match into a back alley beatdown. Pinned to the mat, Huang Kwang-ho just grins, daring them to end it. But the hulking superhuman hesitates, a sudden realization dawning on him. He understands that if they gang up on him, they'll be the villains. He reconsiders the situation, seeing this not as a simple foul, but as a happy little accident, and his grin is absolutely terrifying. A quick reminder of the rules: even in this league, eye gouging is a foul. And kicking a downed opponent is strictly against the regulations, and stomping on a downed opponent is definitely not on the approved list. But getting disqualified was always part of the plan. He's turning his own execution into a spectacle for the masses. It's a high-risk gamble, but it was their only move. She understood the logic, the sheer audacity of it all. But there's one thing she can't understand. Why hasn't the fight been stopped? The crowd roars, not for the man in the ring, but for Paul Roney. They're all here to see a non-powered human get destroyed, and the hulking superhuman is more than happy to oblige. Huang Kwang-ho's blatant foul has only made his execution more entertaining. He lies on the mat, a manic grin on his face, admitting this is driving him crazy. He plants his foot, preparing to make his next move. And his brilliant strategy is revealed. He's just going to run away. The octagon's design is explained. Its shape means there are no corners to get trapped in. His opponent roars in frustration, calling him a coward for refusing to engage, which, as Huang Kwang-ho realizes, makes it the perfect arena for running away. But his cardio session is about to be cut short. The superhuman finally closes the distance, asking how long he plans to flee. A massive fist barrels toward him, ready to end this chase. But Huang Kwang-ho ducks under the attack and lands a brutal counter of his own. He grins, satisfied that his punch found its mark. But the superhuman just takes it, asking if he's finally ready for a real fight. His opponent's body glows with a terrifying red aura of pure rage. Huang Kwang-ho braces himself, blocking the first thunderous blow. The impact is so great it seems to crack the very floor of the ring. A storm of superhuman fists descends, each one radiating with violent energy. Our boy is sent reeling, completely overwhelmed by the raw power. The crowd roars with laughter, calling him an idiot for even trying to defend. Even the commentators mock his efforts, noting that blocking is pointless against a superhuman. They wonder aloud if he came into this fight with any plan whatsoever. The referee looks on, his expression a perfect blend of confusion and apathy. From the sidelines, his boss screams at the official, demanding to know why the fight isn't stopped. But the referee just glances over, offering nothing more than a dismissive hum. And then it hits her. She'd forgotten a crucial, devastating fact. This is the DK League's home turf, and the audience is just as biased. As the brutal, one-sided beatdown continues, no one sees a problem. The woman with yellow eyes understands. The entire system was rigged from the start. These aren't fight fans. They're Paul Roney's fans, here to see a toy get broken. Lying in a pool of his own blood, Huang Kwang-ho thinks back to his last fight. But he admits that he truly envies the man standing before him now. He grins through the blood, mocking the superhuman for his convenient powers. His boss realizes the danger, knowing that forfeiting might be their only way out. But she knows that after all the attention he's built, a forfeit would be the end. The entire world is watching, every eye fixed on their every move. And the judgment in those eyes is absolute and unforgiving. To back down now would mean facing the world's ridicule and scorn. She refuses to accept that fate, desperately searching for another solution. She racks her brain for a way out, a path forward that doesn't end in ruin. But in the ring, the fight continues, the answer nowhere in sight. The two opponents circle each other, a brief lull in the brutal storm. The woman with yellow eyes watches intently, her gaze sharp and calculating. Huang Kwang-ho stands over his opponent, waiting for the fight to resume. He asks the man on the ground what he's even doing. But the superhuman just grins, turning the question right back at him. The crowd watches on, their expressions a mix of boredom and amusement. The man explains he's just waiting for the first round to officially end. He mockingly asks if this isn't the big show everyone came to see. Huang Kwang-ho can only stare, the bizarre turn of events leaving him speechless, and the crowd absolutely loses it, erupting in derisive laughter. They film his humiliation, because public shaming is the best spectator sport. The crowd's laughter echoes through the arena, a chorus of pure mockery. The superhuman taunts him, saying it would be boring to end the fight so quickly. The bell rings and the sign for round 2 is held aloft. Back in the corner, his boss rushes to his side, desperately asking if he's okay. He dismisses his injuries as minor, much to her complete and utter disbelief. He takes the water she offers, his hands bloodied from the first round. He explains that his opponent was holding back just enough to keep the match going. She can't believe he'd call that brutal beatdown strength control, but he confirms it. A single tear escapes, a quiet testament to her overwhelming fear and stress. She calls his name, trying to get through to him before the next round begins. With tears in her eyes, she pleads with him to just forfeit the match. He knows they can't, but she insists they have no other choice right now. She lays out the grim reality. Continuing only leads to more ridicule. She accuses him of being too proud to admit his judgment was wrong. She begs him to be wise, to cut their losses and just end this now. He listens in silence, his expression unreadable for a moment. As the countdown for the next round begins, he finally seems to agree. But of course, he was just messing with her. He has no intention of forfeiting. She screams in frustration, demanding to know what his plan is. He looks back, turning her own desperate question back on her. The crowd roars with insults, shocked that he even dared to show his face again. He ignores their taunts, the questions of what a powerless human could possibly do. They call him a delusional fraud, filming his humiliation for the world to see. They accuse him of being all talk and no skill, a champion in name only. Some even offer to fight him themselves, promising a proper beatdown. But their mockery only fuels his rage, and he vows to make every single one of them regret it. We're then given a lesson on the DK League's strict entry requirements. It's a long, grueling path from manifesting powers to even reaching the lower Pro League. A journey defined by countless victories and the accumulation of points. And even among these chosen few, only the absolute elite can reach the highest level. These elites are the pride of all superhumans, revered as living gods. And the crowd roars for one of them now, Paul Ronnie. He mocks Huang Kuang-ho, asking if he's ready for another beating. He even suggests our boy's just jealous of his popularity. But Huang Kuang-ho just grins, asking why he isn't speaking English. He presses further, questioning if the man is even Korean. And as he explodes forward, he speaks of the one at the apex of this system. The superhuman unleashes a devastating blow in response. But his only answer to the questions is a smug, infuriating wink, real helpful. He holds the pose, clearly enjoying the psychological games. He continues his taunt, speaking of the true champions of their world. He mocks the very idea that these superhumans are the pinnacle of fighting. He believes a true champion reaches the top not through power, but technique. His opponent's only response is a grin of pure, unadulterated fury, a realm beyond raw strength achieved through perfecting one's own skills. And in a flash, technique meets brute force in a stunning display. A high kick, honed through countless battles, shatters his opponent's guard. The entire arena is stunned into silence, their mockery turning to disbelief. Even the woman with yellow eyes can't hide her astonishment at the sudden turn. The commentators lose their minds, unable to explain what they just witnessed. The kick connects with brutal precision, snapping the superhuman's head back. His opponent can only stare in disbelief, demanding to know how it was possible. He struggles to understand, questioning if it was a power or pure skill. But his shock quickly turns to a manic grin, demanding another demonstration. And Huang Kuang-ho obliges, aiming a vicious kick at his opponent's eye. The commentators are in an uproar, screaming about yet another blatant foul. But Huang Kuang-ho's expression remains cold and utterly unconcerned. He throws his opponent's words back at him, calling it a happy little accident. The audience can only watch in stunned silence, their popcorn completely forgotten. He then unleashes a furious barrage, screaming that it's all just one big accident. The referee can only watch, his mind completely short-circuiting. Each blow lands with the force of a small, contained explosion. He tries to form a word, any word, but all that comes out is foul. Huang Kuang-ho's arm tenses, ready to deliver another accident. He brings his fist down, screaming his innocence with every illegal strike. The official has completely checked out. This is way above his pay grade. Even the woman with yellow eyes is left speechless by this brutal turn of events. The crowd erupts in fury, demanding he stop disgracing their precious league. But Huang Kuang-ho just screams back, asking why they're so confused by a simple accident. Their hatred rains down on him, but he seems to welcome the storm. He looks up, bloodied but unbroken by the chaos around him, and offers the furious crowd a single, universally understood gesture. They scream for the match to be invalidated, their rage boiling over. But Huang Kuang-ho calls out their hypocrisy for all to hear. He scoffs at them for trying to change the rules now that they're losing. He then turns to his opponent, asking why he didn't end the fight. The superhuman admits that our boy could have been knocked out earlier. He accepts his defeat, a rare moment of sportsmanship in this dumpster fire. He struggles to understand why Huang Kuang-ho showed him any mercy. The question hangs in the air, and our boy's expression turns grim. Huang Kuang-ho's gaze is cold, his answer ready on his lips. The commentators are left speechless, their prepared scripts now utterly useless. In the stands, the audience can only stare, their minds struggling to catch up. The superhuman grits his teeth, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His aura explodes in a final desperate surge of raw power. But Huang Kuang-ho remains unfazed, his expression almost pitying. He leans in close, accusing his opponent of being the greedy one. He mocks the man's pride, knowing he wanted a true victory, not this farce. The superhuman's hand trembles, his strength finally failing him. And with that final psychological blow, the giant begins to fall. He tells the man he'll show him the true meaning of the terminus. With a bloody smirk, he dismisses his opponent's earlier confidence. He mocks the superhuman's arrogance, saying he couldn't care less about his powers. He then answers the unasked question of why he didn't end the fight sooner. The hulking fighter can only stare, his mind reeling from the psychological warfare, because ending it quickly would be boring, and Huang Kuang-ho is just getting started. The sign for the third round is held high. We're reminded that for a non-title match, this is the final round. The crowd, including the woman with yellow eyes, watches with bated breath. And in that moment, they all realize what this means for the fight. The final round is about to begin, the one that will decide everything. Huang Kuang-ho looks back, bruised but with eyes still burning with defiance. He glances toward his boss, expecting another lecture or a plea to stop. He turns away, ready to face his opponent and finish this on his own terms. But a sudden, desperate shout of encouragement cuts through the arena's roar. He's genuinely surprised, having braced himself for yet another scolding. She has a million questions about his methods, but shoves them all aside for now. And incredibly, the crowd joins her, their boos finally turning into cheers. The very people who mocked him are now screaming for his victory. Funny how that works. She channels all her fear and frustration into one final deafening roar of support. He turns back with a bruised but triumphant grin, casually accepting their support. But then a thought crosses his mind, his expression turning suddenly serious. His opponent extends a hand, a gesture that feels more like a threat than a truce. The superhuman grins, suggesting they have a proper greeting before the final round. Huang Kuang-ho eyes him suspiciously, asking if this is a handshake or an attack. His opponent claims it's all about mutual respect. Sure it is, buddy. Our boy can only scoff at the blatant hypocrisy of it all. But he accepts the handshake, a silent battle of wills in a single grip. The referee's command cuts through the tension, ordering them to their positions. The formalities are over. The third and final round is about to begin. The final round begins with a brutal head-on clash of fists. The superhuman unleashes his full power, declaring it's time to end this. But Huang Kuang-ho's eyes roll back, his senses completely scrambled. From the sidelines, his boss screams for him to snap out of his daze. Elsewhere, two figures watch, noting how vibrations can numb an opponent's senses. A man in a suit seems impressed by the non-powered fighter's tenacity, but his hooded companion dismisses the effort as ultimately useless. A close-up reveals their strange, multi-pupiled eyes. Well, that's not creepy at all. They declare that Huang Kuang-ho has finally reached his absolute limit. And in his mind, our boy is lost in a void, facing the true meaning of the terminus. He struggles to focus, relieved that his sense of touch is still there. But in the real world, a final devastating blow is already on its way. A brutal uppercut sends our boy's body sailing across the ring. The impact connects with bone-shattering force, a perfect strike. His opponent grins, savoring the moment of absolute dominance. He's caught and slammed, completely at the mercy of his opponent's power. But through the pain, a manic smile appears, because of course it does. The superhuman looms over him, asking if this is finally the end. He taunts him about his reflexes, clearly enjoying the psychological game. And then he unleashes a final cataclysmic blast of pure energy. But the blast is met with a desperate last-second counter from below. The hulking superhuman is sent flying, a giant toppled by a single strike. His face is a mask of pure disbelief, unable to process the sudden reversal. The impact echoes through the arena, a sound no one expected to hear. But in his mind, Huang Kuang-ho is still lost, adrift in a sea of white. Because reality is far crueler than any momentary imagined victory. He grits his teeth against the true impact, the one that actually landed on him. The force of the blow sends shockwaves across the entire ring. His opponent taunts him, asking how it feels to be betrayed by his own senses. And Huang Kuang-ho can only sit there, defeated and disoriented on the mat. He's battered and bruised, but a faint smirk plays on his lips. His opponent's eyes gleam with the cold confidence of a predator. The superhuman stands over him, waiting for the inevitable declaration. He calls out to the referee, his voice dripping with arrogance, and demands that the official announce his victory right now. He mocks our boy, laughing about how his own senses betrayed him. On the mat, Huang Kuang-ho finally understands the nature of the attack. His opponent confirms it with a gleeful, mocking celebration. He explains that the moment his power touched him, his senses knew who was superior, that his body simply gave up, recognizing the true alpha in the ring. He claims our boy's senses betrayed their weaker owner to obey him instead. He winds up for a final, brutal strike, his face a mask of victory. But Huang Kuang-ho explodes from the mat, grabbing his opponent's head. A brutal headbutt connects, a last-ditch effort from the downed fighter. He grins through the pain, saying the fight was over when he used Terminus. He mockingly claims he doesn't enjoy such an easy win, but what can you do? A strange light emanates from the back of his head, a sign of his power. He tells our boy to take pride in forcing him to use his ultimate technique. His fist glows with power, ready to end this match once and for all. And with a manic grin, he introduces himself as Paul Ronnie, finally acknowledging his foe. The final blow lands, a cataclysmic strike of pure red energy. Paul Ronnie grits his teeth, pouring all his power into this one attack. But Huang Kuang-ho is furious, not at his opponent, but at his own body. He decides if his senses won't listen, he'll just have to beat them into submission. We flash back 3 days to a much more relaxed training session. His boss finds him on the couch, vibrating like a broken washing machine. She questions his methods, since his plan was to get disqualified anyway. But Huang Kuang-ho just mumbles that this bizarre self-torture feels good. She tries to rationalize it, wondering if this is his secret training method. She concludes that sometimes a good smack is the only medicine that works. Back in the present, Huang Kuang-ho's eyes are wide with a manic clarity, and his boss finally understands the purpose of his bizarre massage gun training. The commentators are stunned, questioning how he broke Paul Ronnie's ultimate ability. They theorize it was the shock to his head, a desperate and impossible counter. A move so reckless, they conclude, that only a madman would even attempt it. Paul Ronnie grins, asking if his opponent is as crazy as he seems. He knows that no sane person would try to counter his power in such a way. From the stands, Paul Ronnie's associate adds another crucial detail to the equation. A self-inflicted shock of that magnitude can only be done once or twice at most. But for Huang Kuang-ho, once or twice is more than enough to turn the tables. With his senses back online, Huang Kuang-ho unleashes a furious counterattack. He explains that light hits can be endured, a simple matter of pain tolerance, and that big telegraphed moves are easy enough to dodge. He demonstrates by slipping under a swing and landing a brutal uppercut. But his real strategy is something far more up close and personal. A brutal kick lands, aimed at breaking his opponent's rhythm. The impact reverberates through the superhuman's body. Because when you're this close, there's no room to block your opponent's strikes. But Paul Ronnie is a top-tier fighter for a reason, and he counters instantly. He locks in a submission, because choking a guy out is always a crowd pleaser. Paul Ronnie squeezes with all his might, trying to end the fight right there. But for all its power, the superhuman's chokehold proves to be completely useless. With a surge of strength, Huang Kuang-ho pries the massive arms apart. He breaks free, realizing what he has to rely on to win this. A fighting technique that has been honed to a superhuman level. Paul Ronnie tenses, his muscles coiling like steel cables. He grins, acknowledging that he already understands his opponent's strength. He knows that against his power, the only advantage Huang Kuang-ho has is technique. But our boy's eyes narrow and he calls out to the superhuman. He offers a suggestion, because why not negotiate in the middle of a death match? Paul Ronnie considers the offer, a smug grin playing on his lips. Huang Kuang-ho points out that time is running out in the final round. He tells Paul Ronnie to drop his guard and give him his best shot. He dares the superhuman to use his Terminus technique one more time. The terms are set. Paul Ronnie will use his ultimate power. And in return, Huang Kuang-ho will unleash a devastating kick. A final all-or-nothing clash of their ultimate techniques. But Paul Ronnie just scoffs, asking why he'd ever agree to such a dumb plan. Fair point, actually. Huang Kuang-ho mocks him, asking if he's suddenly afraid of a high kick. The taunt works, and with a sinister laugh, Paul Ronnie accepts the challenge. He believes that if you can't win with the skills you have, then you have to fight with what you don't. And what Huang Kuang-ho doesn't have is a single shred of honor. He completely ignores their agreement because promises are for people who play fair. With a manic grin, he proves he has none of the pride a true fighter should. He attacks mid-sentence, aiming directly for Paul Ronnie's previously injured eye. Faking a high kick, he changes its path mid-air to strike from a blind spot. It's a dirty, underhanded tactic, but it's undeniably effective. He follows up instantly with a brutal left hook to the jaw. The superhuman is sent reeling, caught completely off guard by the cheap shot. He grabs hold of the dazed superhuman, refusing to let him recover. Because this is how his plan works, by creating absolute chaos. He knows that when things get complicated, judgment gets cloudy, and with a manic grin, he prepares to exploit that very confusion. Because when a fighter's mind is fuzzy and overwhelmed, their body will instinctively fall back on old habits. They'll lean on what they trust most, their ultimate technique, terminus. Paul Ronnie takes the bait, meeting the challenge with his own raw power. A cataclysmic blast of energy erupts from the superhuman's fist. But Huang Kwang-ho was ready, and the ultimate attack is blocked. He knows a single strike like this wouldn't normally connect, but thanks to the chaos, it's landing again and again. Paul Ronnie's judgment is clouded, his instincts completely failing him. Huang Kwang-ho screams, knowing that unpredictability is his only weapon. He believes that if a coincidence happens twice, it becomes inevitable. And if it happens a third time, it becomes destiny. The audience watches, seeing him turn a lucky break into an unavoidable outcome. And as the commentators realize, that's how you forge a victory from nothing. His boss can only stare, the sheer audacity of his plan finally hitting her. In the ring, a single fist is clenched, ready to deliver that final fated blow. He gasps for air, declaring, "This is the true meaning of being a fighter." The battle is visualized as a seismograph, charting every tremor. The needle frantically records the violent exchange of blows. And then, with a final shuddering stop, the line goes flat. He stands over his fallen foe, turning coincidence into a law of nature. The giant's life force fades, a final dying pulse in the silent arena. Paul Ronnie can only stare up, his world turned completely upside down. He sees the unpowered human who somehow managed to topple a god. The final blow lands, a strike that rewrites the rules of their world. They say it's impossible for humans to overcome nature's law, but his boss can only scream in horror as the announcer declares the match is over. The crowd erupts, celebrating Paul Ronnie's devastating blow to Huang Kwang-ho's chin. The commentators laugh, casually remarking on how severe the damage must be. They warn that even a blocked punch to the chin can be a knockout blow. The medical team enters the octagon, ready to carry out the fallen fighter. But a single hand rises in defiance, stopping them in their tracks. Huang Kwang-ho stands, asking who gave them permission to enter his ring. The medics are confused, insisting the fight is over and he's badly hurt. But his eyes are clear, burning with an unwavering, impossible focus. He agrees that the injuries are severe, just not his own. Blood splatters across the canvas, a grim testament to the final blow. From the mat, Huang Kwang-ho looks up at the giant who defeated him. His body is hunched, the weight of the impact pressing down on him. But Paul Ronnie can only stare, his mind struggling to understand how. Huang Kwang-ho's feet struggle for purchase, his body refusing to collapse. The superhuman questions how anyone could take that hit and still be standing. The commentators scream in denial, refusing to believe he has powers. Because what they just witnessed wasn't a man withstanding a blow, but Paul Ronnie's fist connecting with absolutely nothing but air. The superhuman's ultimate attack had missed its mark completely. The commentators are baffled, questioning why Paul Ronnie isn't using his abilities. Instead, both men are trading blows, completely abandoning any pretense of defense. The entire arena struggles to process the raw, chaotic brawl unfolding before them. And the commentators absolutely lose it as the clock reveals only 20 seconds remain. His boss realizes victory now comes down to whoever can take the most punishment. It's a desperate, brutal exchange of pure grit and fury. Paul Ronnie unleashes another haymaker, forgoing all technique for raw power. A devastating blow connects as the final seconds tick away from the clock. And through it all, the superhuman wears a grin of pure, unhinged joy. Because of course he does. But Huang Kwang-ho meets the onslaught head-on, refusing to give a single inch. With 15 seconds left, Huang Kwang-ho digs a brutal punch into his opponent's side. The impact ripples through the superhuman's chiseled physique. But our boy just grins through the blood, a mask of pure, unhinged determination. Paul Ronnie's fist clenches, ready to return the favor with interest. He swings with everything he has left as the clock ticks down to 12 seconds. The blow lands, a thunderous impact that would fell any normal man. But Huang Kwang-ho answers with another strike of his own, the clock now at 10. He's battered and bruised, but his focus remains absolutely unshaken. A sudden cold clarity cuts through the chaos in his eyes. They're locked in a desperate clinch, a storm of fury in the final moments. The clock ticks down to 8 seconds, an eternity in a fight like this. Huang Kwang-ho grits his teeth, pushing through a wall of pure agony. He plants his foot, digging into the canvas for one final desperate move. His footing is sure, even on a floor slick with sweat and blood. In a stunning display of technique, he hoists the Superhuman into the air. The resulting slam shakes the entire octagon, a sound of pure, unadulterated impact. With only 6 seconds left, both men are down, the cost of the move immense. But Hwang Kwang-ho forces himself up, his body screaming in protest. His eyes are wide with a terrifying, unbreakable focus. And across the ring, his opponent begins to stir, refusing to stay down. The clock ticks down to 4 seconds, each moment an eternity. Paul Ronnie rises, a titan refusing to be felled by a mere mortal. With 2 seconds left, they lock eyes, one last chance to end it. The Superhuman throws one final, desperate punch with everything he has left. His massive hand finds its mark, a grip of pure, crushing power. He pins Hwang Kwang-ho, determined to break his unyielding spirit. But as the final bell rings, they're still locked in a brutal stalemate. The announcer screams that the match is over, his voice cracking with disbelief. In the silent aftermath, only one man is left standing in the ring. The crowd can only stare, their minds unable to process the impossible outcome. Elsewhere, a woman in a suit waits patiently, enjoying a simple meal. The strange observers watch the aftermath, their expressions unreadable. And in a hospital room, Paul Ronnie sits broken, his reign as a god now over. We flash back to his boss, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated stress. She remembers the final, brutal exchange that decided the entire match. Now, in the present, a lone car speeds down the highway into the sunset. She drives in silence, the weight of their impossible victory settling in. But Hwang Kwang-ho breaks the tension, casually announcing he's hungry. They pull into a rest stop, a moment of normalcy in a chaotic world. He heads to the restroom to wash away the blood of his victory. But 2 women leaving the restroom stare in shock at the sight of him. His boss overhears their concern, a familiar sense of dread creeping in. Her mind flashes back to another fighter, another time someone wouldn't wake up. A memory of a dark night in a lonely building, long since buried. She remembers the sound of footsteps approaching a door, and the feeling of being carried, her own body broken and limp. A phantom pain sears through her chest as the traumatic memory takes hold. She relives the terror, the desperate gasps for air in the suffocating darkness. The footsteps stop, a brief moment of safety before the next horror. And the quiet whisper that the nightmare was finally truly over. The crowd is in an uproar, refusing to accept the match's outcome. They scream for a rematch, even accusing him of colluding with his opponent. His boss offers a shaky thumbs up, a brave face for the man on the stretcher. He weakly returns the gesture, confirming he's still among the living. Though he lost by decision, a top fighter failing to KO him is a moral victory. The fans can't accept it, their rage echoing through the now empty arena. Later, in the quiet of an office, the 2 of them reflect on the aftermath. She voices her doubts, wondering if they pushed their luck too far this time. Her gaze is heavy, the strange stitches around her eye a stark reminder of past battles. She's lost in thought, contemplating the impossible path that lies ahead. She begins a quiet, honest confession in the darkened office. She admits she never truly trusted Hwang Kwang-ho, expecting him to flee. But she watched from the sidelines as he endured it all without backing down. Now she questions everything, wondering why he would fight so desperately. The simple, unanswered question hangs heavy in the silent room. As he rests, she's left alone with her thoughts and growing doubts. But then, a sudden, startling thought cuts through her confusion. She recalls a phrase, a saying she'd heard somewhere before. A memory of someone saying a man would risk it all for the woman he loves. Oh boy, here we go. She looks over at him, the impossible question suddenly seeming all too real. Her romantic delusion is shattered as Hwang Kwang-ho wakes up, asking about the weather. He then asks if she's heard back, but she just suggests they order some food. And so they do, ordering a celebratory feast that could feed a small army. As the delivery driver leaves, Hwang Kwang-ho seems confused about the order. His boss quickly covers, telling the driver he's just a bit concussed from the fight, but a little brain damage won't stop him from enjoying some well-earned fried chicken. She suggests they check the world's reaction to his impossible performance. He agrees without a second thought, while she's practically vibrating with anxiety. She can't comprehend his calm, wondering if he feels any pressure at all. But as the camera pans over the aftermath, the empty bowls are stained with blood. The search results are in, and the fight has gone completely viral. His boss hesitates for a moment before selecting the post-match interview. They watch as a reporter from an MMA review channel begins his segment. He's out on the streets, ready to gauge the public's reaction to the fight. The reporter announces a survey, wanting to know what the world really thinks. The first interview is with a student who admits the fight inspired him. 2 women offer a split opinion. One found it cool, the other just found him creepy. A man with glasses calls the match remarkable, despite being fundamentally unfair. But another man argues that Huang Kwang-ho chose to be there, so he can't complain. He claims Paul Ronnie was just being merciful, and our boy should be grateful. The next woman interviewed is furious, asking why he deserves any respect. The reporter moves on, searching for the next soundbite for his segment. An older man is next, his expression one of deep disappointment. But his disappointment quickly turns to rage over the blatant fouls. He screams that Huang Kwang-ho is a criminal who sets a terrible example. Another man steps up, certain that our boy is watching this very broadcast. He spits on the ground and delivers a direct, violent threat. Real charmer, this one. Huang Kwang-ho watches in silence, his face an unreadable mask. The next person argues that as a professional, he should have shown more discipline. A young woman struggles to find the words, trailing off in confusion. The old man's face contorts with rage as he calls Huang Kwang-ho an irredeemable piece of trash. His boss can only watch, the hatred of the world reflected in her pained expression. Her hand reaches out, trembling, ready to end the broadcast. She finally breaks, suggesting they've seen more than enough. Her finger hovers over the screen, a single press away from silencing the abuse. But Huang Kwang-ho's hand closes around her wrist, stopping her cold. With an unnerving calm, he tells her to let it play. The reporter confirms the public sentiment is overwhelmingly negative. Shocking, I know. She looks back at him, unable to understand why he'd subject himself to this. But the reporter on screen pivots, asking why any of this should matter at all. He claims that true fans know exactly what kind of fighter Huang Kwang-ho is, and the only question that matters now is if people want to see him fight again. Back on the couch, they both lean in, waiting for the public's verdict. The interviewees are caught off guard, their previous anger turning to confusion. The reporter's voice booms, promising to reveal the definitive answer. He holds the microphone, ready to deliver the final word on the matter. Because despite the outrage, a new feeling is taking root, morbid curiosity. She still holds his wrist, the two of them frozen by the broadcast. The reporter argues that Huang Kwang-ho has already proven his worth in the ring, and now, the world wants to see just how much chaos he can cause. The reporter reveals the final verdict. The world demands a rematch. Huang Kwang-ho and his boss can only stare, their fate hanging on this one answer. And the answer is a resounding yes, the world will be watching. The phone slips from her hand, the tension finally breaking. They erupt in a wild, cathartic celebration, their gamble having paid off spectacularly. A few moments later, the adrenaline has worn off, leaving them utterly spent. Huang Kwang-ho admits he honestly thought their plan had failed. His boss echoes the sentiment, a wave of pure relief washing over her. But as the relief settles, her expression shifts, a new thought taking hold. She's snapped out of it when he asks a bizarre question about trendy words. She can only stare at the phone, her mind completely blown. He shows her the search results. They've hit number 1 across the board. The sheer scale of their success leaves her utterly speechless. He explains that one good show is better than 1,000 empty promises. He tells her that now she can see there's nothing to lose by trusting him. But she still struggles to believe one fight could have this much impact. He just grins, enjoying her slow realization that his mad plan actually worked. She can only rationalize it as a series of impossible coincidences. And Huang Kwang-ho agrees, admitting that luck played a major part. But he adds that being able to act on that luck is what truly matters. She lets out a single sharp laugh, the sound cutting through the quiet room. The laughter builds into a wave of manic relief as she buries her face in her hands. He asks if she's finally grasping the full scope of his insane plan. She looks up, her eyes gleaming with a wild, newfound understanding of his methods. With a triumphant grin, she realizes her gamble on him was the right call all along. Later, walking beside him, she reflects that he's a genius on a completely different level. He casually eats street food while she marvels at his incredible, crisis-handling intuition. Her mind races, cataloging all the qualities that make him so dangerously effective. She even admits he's not bad-looking before he snaps her out of it by demanding she pay. Classic. His hand tightens around the skewer, a subtle hint of the tension beneath his calm exterior. But she realizes that above all his other qualities, there's something else that sets him apart. He offers her a skewer, a simple act of kindness in the quiet night. And her mind immediately leaps to the only logical conclusion. He's totally into her. The scene shifts, recapping how his provocations left a lasting impression on the world. He channeled the crowd's anger and his own fury into a weapon. He backed up every taunt with undeniable, bone-shattering proof of his skill. And as his boss watched, she saw him deliver exactly what the world wanted. He showed them that a man without powers could stand in their arena. The results were astonishing. forging their hatred into a twisted form of celebrity. But elsewhere, in a quiet classroom, a student seems completely unimpressed by the hype. His classmate asks if he dislikes Hwang Kwang-ho, but he has a different take. He explains that the public doesn't care about the sport, only the man himself. For him, the real entertainment has always been Hwang Kwang-ho's personal drama. In another part of the city, a woman stares at her monitor, her expression one of pure disbelief. She and a colleague watch as their online traffic and search rankings plummet. She desperately tries to figure out what crucial element they're missing. Her partner offers a bizarre suggestion about a lack of water. Real helpful, buddy. But his strange words trigger a sudden, shocking realization in her mind. She looks over at him, seeing him in a new, much more ominous light. Her sudden scream of terror cuts through the quiet office. Her colleague turns from his work, calmly announcing that he's finished. The source of the noise, a freshly blended chicken breast shake, truly a culinary masterpiece. She explodes in fury, demanding to know why he's using a blender at work. The machine vibrates violently, the sound that triggered her panic. She reminds him that this is an office, but he just looks away, unconcerned. He turns back with a deadpan stare, asking if she has a problem. Utterly defeated, she collapses to the floor in despair. She looks up, realizing with dawning horror that there's no one else, and that this very man is the only person she can possibly trust. He asks what the problem is, assuring her everything is going according to plan. She stares back in disbelief, wondering what plan he could possibly mean. He kneels down to her level, his expression calm and unwavering. He questions her panic, claiming he already explained all of this to her before. A menacing grin spreads across his face as the memory returns. The image of his clenched fist triggers a long-buried recollection. She finally remembers, admitting she was too lost in thought to listen. We flash back to another fight, another arena, another brutal exchange. She was there, watching from the stands as he fought for his life. She recalls him saying something, but the words were lost in the chaos. He presses her, asking what was on her mind since she clearly wasn't listening. She panics internally, knowing she absolutely cannot tell him the truth. But she steels herself, determined to find a way to handle the situation. The scene shifts to the quiet of an office restroom, a moment of solitude. She stares at her reflection as their company's numbers continue to plummet. With a grim resolve, she decides she has to confront him about his plan. But she's paralyzed by indecision, wondering what to say or if it even matters. She questions why she's even letting this get to her in the first place. Alone in the empty room, she's trapped by her own spiraling thoughts. She leans against the sink, the weight of it all finally crashing down on her. She remains in the empty restroom, hunched over the sink. Her face is hidden in shadow, lost in her own despair. She looks up, a flush of deep embarrassment coloring her cheeks. The shame quickly morphs into a cold, panicked sweat. She stares at her own reflection, a portrait of utter defeat. Elsewhere, a confident step echoes in a silent hallway. A new figure appears, her yellow eyes burning with cold purpose. She walks with an unnerving calm, a predator returning to her territory. She declares that she has finally come to her senses, feeling right at home. She stands before a door, ready to catch up on some very important work. Her hand closes around the doorknob, ready to make her entrance. She doesn't just enter, she kicks the door wide open. She's here to discuss the plan that Hwang Kwang-ho has set in motion, and her piercing yellow eyes suggest this isn't a friendly review. Inside, she finds the two colleagues caught completely off guard. The woman with the white streak can only stare in utter shock. Her partner, however, seems entirely unfazed by the intrusion. The newcomer steps into the light, her presence filling the room. Her face is hidden in shadow, her intentions a complete mystery. As he asks what she wants, his partner begs him to report the threat. Well, that's one way to handle HR issues. But instead of helping, her partner suddenly turns and attacks her. She screams in disbelief, her trust completely shattered in an instant. He lifts her into the air, his grip tightening around her throat. Her mind reels, unable to process the sudden, violent betrayal. He locks her in a chokehold, her cries for help echoing in the office. The newcomer simply watches, asking why he would do such a thing. The question hangs in the air, a demand for an explanation. Her gaze is cold and analytical, watching the scene unfold. And in her eyes, we see a flicker of a painful, familiar memory. A memory of a time when she was the one caught in that very same chokehold. He explains that with her out of the way, there's no one left to interfere. The memory fades, replaced by the cold reality of the present. The yellow-eyed woman suggests they get back to their previous discussion. Her partner looks over, his expression unreadable. And with a chilling smile, he readily agrees. because of course he does. He moves closer, his intentions still shrouded in mystery. He leans in, asking her to remind him where their conversation left off. She begins to recount the details of their original plan, a plan that revolves around the future of the DK League. She confirms that the League has no plans for another match, just as she told him before. He leans in close, questioning if he misheard her statement. The yellow-eyed woman confirms her words with an unwavering stare. The two of them stand in the quiet office, a silent negotiation taking place. He considers her words, trying to understand the angle she's playing. He asks the obvious question, why would the League refuse a rematch? She lays out his plan, knowing he wants to capitalize on the hype. She correctly deduces he's banking on the DK League needing this fight, and with a slight nod, she admits his assessment was spot on. He tells her to make it happen, but she reveals it's not that simple. Bureaucracy, the true final boss of any grand plan. She explains the complication. He disrespected Paul Ronnie, a black rank fighter. She explains the fouls are just an excuse. The real crime was defiling the black rank's symbolism. But he just smirks, claiming he never committed any fouls in the first place. He calls it an accident, asking why they'd complain now after making the final call. She suggests they can simply spin that narrative into the truth using public opinion. It's just the inevitable fate, she says, of a league far weaker than their own. The two of them face off in the dimly lit office, a silent power struggle unfolding. He casually remarks on the small size of her office, a subtle, condescending jab. She reminds him that his people were the ones who destroyed their original headquarters. Her eyes narrow as she asks if this, too, is the fate of a weaker league. He simply blows the comment away, completely unfazed by her pointed remark. He cuts her off, tired of the verbal sparring and demanding she get to the point. He rises from his seat, his posture immediately aggressive. He gets in her face, accusing her of coming here to make threats and a proposal. But the yellow-eyed woman doesn't even flinch, meeting his gaze with cold indifference. He releases her, and she agrees it's best not to waste any more time. The man is visibly taken aback by her complete lack of fear. She flashes a peace sign, a bizarrely casual gesture in this tense standoff, a true professional. He asks what she's playing at, and she promises 2 pieces of good news to follow the bad. First, she explains that Huang Kuang-ho's performance is simply too valuable to ignore. His hand tightens, a sign of the tension building beneath his calm facade. She reveals the first piece of good news. They've decided to grant him a pro card. He looks at the document with utter disdain, questioning what this crap is. She clarifies it's not for the main DK League, but for their lower pro leagues. He immediately sees the angle. They want him to grind in the minors for pocket change. She tries to sell it, explaining he can maintain his place in the MMA League as well. But his answer is a swift and decisive refusal. She tells him to hear her out, because there's more to the offer. The deal is simple. If he can secure 3 specific victories, he'll get his shot at the official league. She frames it as a golden opportunity to build the minor league from the ground up. A real bootstrap story. Meanwhile, his betrayed partner lies on the floor, muttering in a pained, unconscious state. His eyes narrow, weighing the pros and cons of her offer. He asks for the second piece of good news she promised. She explains that Paul Ronnie's rampage has caused problems even for the DK League. He's unimpressed, demanding to know the details of her supposed punishment. Her penalty, she reveals, is to personally assist Huang Kuang-ho. A flash of memory reveals her own past defeat, a moment of utter vulnerability. He slowly begins to understand the implications of this new arrangement. She begins to list her qualifications, starting with her brilliant mind. And of course, her stunning good looks. Can't forget those. She strikes a pose, announcing she's joining their sinking team. Her partner can only stare, questioning how she managed to secure the pro card. The scene cuts to Huang Kuang-ho, who offers his own eloquent one-word assessment of the plan. And so we find ourselves at the DK League's lower pro division finals. The announcer hypes the crowd, explaining a win here is a ticket to the main stage. In the stands, the 2 strange observers are back, enjoying the show in their own way. Across the ring, Huang Kuang-ho's opponent looks on with weary disdain. Our boy stands alone, contemplating the true reason he was sent down this path. A fan's cheer echoes through the arena, but he remains completely unfazed. His opponent points, vowing to take him down and bring justice to the world. A real Boy Scout, this one. He accuses Huang Kuang-ho of rigging the Paul Ronnie fight to stir up controversy. The self-proclaimed hero declares that Huang Kuang-ho's dirty tricks end now. He vows to unmask the villain, while our boy just looks bored by the monologue. With a righteous scream, he charges forward to deliver his so-called justice. And just like that, justice is served, in the form of a knockout on the canvas. His boss congratulates him on the win, confirming he's one step closer to his goal. But Huang Kwang-ho questions why he has to waste time on these minor league fighters. The yellow-eyed woman simply states that rules are rules, much to his annoyance. His boss suggests he rest, worried about the toll of fighting so many matches. But the yellow-eyed woman's cold gaze offers a single decisive answer. Huang Kwang-ho agrees, determined to set a record and crush the competition. The next opponent is a masked man with a chilling laugh and a lesson on death. Huang Kwang-ho answers the monologue with a swift kick to the head. The next challenger wields a strange, shadowy power, but our boy is unfazed. And just like the last one, he's left broken on the canvas. The next opponent powers up, his body crackling with raw lightning. But for all his lightning, he's quickly caught in an inescapable hold. His final opponent, a woman in red, tells him to give it his all. The result is the same, leaving the referee completely stunned. 2 more victories are secured, symbolized by 2 gleaming gold medals. Back in the office, they acknowledge his record-breaking climb through the ranks. He tells them he's just 1 point away and demands the next match immediately. The yellow-eyed woman feigns concern, warning him about the dangers of breaking records. But Huang Kwang-ho cuts her off, his patience completely worn thin. His boss begins to count, a look of dawning horror on her face. The yellow-eyed woman realizes he's fought 16 consecutive matches. He confirms it from the floor, stating that breaks are not part of the plan. His boss finally loses it, screaming that his recklessness will get him killed. But he simply reaches out, silencing her mid-rant with a single hand. He pulls her close, admitting she's right. But he's not going to listen. Because of course he isn't. He points forward, his demand unchanged, leaving his boss to fume in frustration. The yellow-eyed woman explains that his judgment is correct. Titles matter. His boss screams that she knows, but Huang Kwang-ho just seems amused by her panic. He boasts about his competence, asking if she's finally impressed. The yellow-eyed woman's deadpan stare suggests she's anything but his boss seems to have a sudden, desperate change of heart. She stammers out a single, desperate suggestion for a party, and then demands it with the full force of her fraying sanity. He tells her they don't have time, but she insists on a small celebration. Huang Kwang-ho's gaze is cold, weighing her desperate request. She falls to her knees, begging him for this one small mercy. Priorities, I guess. The yellow-eyed woman calmly states that a fighter knows their own limits best. Huang Kwang-ho finally relents, agreeing to the party before his next match. He tells them to get it over with, heading out to grab some food himself. His boss can only watch, the sheer relief mixing with her utter exhaustion. But the yellow-eyed woman finds this sudden demand for a party suspicious. The boss asks what's so important about a celebration at a time like this. The yellow-eyed woman turns the question back on her, asking what her true motives are. She decides to be direct, admitting she doesn't understand Huang Kwang-ho's thinking, but she finds it even harder to trust his boss, questioning her reckless matchmaking. She asks if this is all part of some larger DK League scheme, earning a sharp rebuke. His boss explodes, accusing her of lying through her teeth. She grabs the woman by the collar, her patience completely gone. She demands to know the real agenda, screaming about the stunts she's pulled. But the yellow-eyed woman just stares back, completely unfazed by the outburst. The boss sees this calm demeanor as a threat, demanding she stop the games. The woman's deadpan response only fuels the fire. She's clearly enjoying this. She offers a cryptic remark, her expression one of cold amusement. In the quiet office, the one-sided confrontation continues. The yellow-eyed woman's gaze is unwavering, a picture of absolute control. But as the boss stares back, a new thought begins to form in the darkness. Her eyes widen in dawning horror as the pieces finally click into place. We cut to the gleaming headquarters of the Dodecathian Kingdom. Inside, the CEO's office reveals the true mastermind behind the chaos. The CEO questions why Paul Ronnie abandoned his skills for a simple brawl. A man in a white suit enters, the very one who sent his assistant to their team. The CEO's glowing eyes narrow, accusing him of protesting the league's authority. But the man plays dumb, denying any such insubordination. An aide demands to know the reason for his reckless, unsanctioned actions. The man just grins, claiming he was simply playing the part of a professional. A professional pain in the neck, maybe. But the aide reminds him this was a direct order from the very top. But the man in the white suit says he has one thing to confirm first. The CEO's glowing eyes narrow as he demands to know why his orders were ignored. The two men face off in the vast, imposing office, a clear power play unfolding. The aide dismisses the question, claiming the answer should be obvious. The CEO's gaze intensifies, his patience clearly wearing thin with this insubordination. With a mocking grin, the aide calls the CEO's strategy dirty and underhanded. He challenges his boss directly, telling him to stop giving orders from the shadows. The CEO reminds him that this is a neutral zone where powers are forbidden, a rule that's about to be hilariously ignored. The aide's hand slams down, the impact cracking the stone desk beneath his palm. He leaves a glowing handprint, mockingly repeating the rule he just shattered. He lunges forward with a roar, challenging the CEO to stop him. His eyes glow with malice, his hands crackling with raw, destructive energy. But the aide leaps to his master's defense, unleashing a power of his own. The CEO, however, remains completely unfazed, his own eyes flaring to life. A green shield deflects the blow, and the CEO calmly dismisses his subordinate. The man in the white suit backs off with a smirk, claiming he's grown bored of the game. He pats the aide on the shoulder, ready to correct a key misunderstanding. He explains he didn't use his powers in the third round because he was simply too exhausted. He looks back with a nostalgic grin, admitting it was a truly enjoyable fight. A man who appreciates the simple things, like a good old-fashioned beatdown. And as he leaves, he warns them to stop their dirty tricks and schemes. The man in the white suit makes his exit, leaving the CEO alone in the silence. His final words reveal his true motive. This is all a personal quest for revenge. The CEO of the Dodecathion Kingdom sits in quiet contemplation. With the test now over, he declares that he will handle Huang Kuang-ho himself. He agrees to the man's terms, a dangerous understanding passing between them. Back on the streets, Huang Kuang-ho is out for food, unaware the League has washed its hands of him. He moves through the crowd, just another face in the neon-lit city. But from the shadows, a new figure watches, her red eyes burning with intent. She tips her cap, confirming she's finally found her target. Nothing good ever comes from red eyes in a dark alley. The scene shifts to a quiet side street, the perfect stage for an ambush. But as he walks down the darkened street, he's not as alone as he thinks. He glances back, spotting a masked figure lurking in the shadows. The watcher's red eyes burn with a cold, predatory focus. Her hands clench the fabric of her coat, preparing to strike. The tension builds in the silent alley, a promise of violence to come. In an instant, she's in his face, demanding to know who he is. Her gaze is sharp, analytical, and utterly devoid of fear. She pins him against a wall, demanding answers in 3 seconds flat. So much for a quiet night. But her cold demeanor shatters as tears stream down her face. She insists it's a misunderstanding, but he just starts counting, completely unmoved. He finishes his countdown, his expression cold and unyielding. The woman panics, her tough facade crumbling as she's swiftly taken down. Back in the office, his boss and the yellow-eyed woman wait by the window. The boss's anxiety is palpable as she stares at her new, unnervingly calm colleague. Huang Kuang-ho returns with the food, and his boss rushes to meet him in a panic. Her hand grips his face, a desperate search for any sign of injury. She frantically checks him over, asking if he's hurt. He seems baffled by her reaction. She tries to explain, rambling about her investigation into his next opponents. She screams that the fighters in this league are incredibly dangerous. He just tells her she's overreacting. But she insists, warning him they'll do anything to win, even outside the ring. He gently brushes a strand of hair from her face, silencing her frantic words. He tells her he knows what she's worried about, but this isn't his first rodeo. With a casual confidence, he assures her he can take care of himself. But she cuts through his calm, revealing the one thing he didn't expect. It's a cult. Huang Kuang-ho turns back, the single word stopping him in his tracks. She explains that every single fighter in the upcoming match belongs to the same organization, and it's a terrifying one, a group that worships nothing but raw absolute power. The three of them stand in the quiet office, the revelation hanging heavy in the air. He crushes the container in his hand, questioning if his opponents are out of their minds. His boss insists this is no joke, explaining she's done her research and they are genuinely dangerous. She flinches, the reality of his opponent's fanaticism finally sinking in. But Huang Kuang-ho just calmly eats, asking where she got this information. He presses her, wanting to know the source of her supposed investigation. We flash back to her begging the yellow-eyed woman for help. She was on her knees, pleading for any insider information she could get. The woman's response was a cruel smile, telling her to grovel like a worm. But the boss's pride flared, refusing to be humiliated any further. Back in the present, Huang Kuang-ho changes the subject, asking if she saw anyone suspicious. He seems genuinely curious, wondering what she might have encountered. And we see the threat, the red-eyed woman, beaten and bruised, just wanting an autograph. So much for a deadly assassin. The red-eyed woman insists it was all just a simple misunderstanding. But back in the office, Huang Kuang-ho finds her fan story a little too convenient. The yellow-eyed woman agrees, finding the whole situation suspicious. His boss brushes it off, just glad he's safe and ready for their party. He dismisses the threats, focused only on the food and his next fight. He asks about the chicken, and his boss confirms she ordered his favorite, a true professional. The yellow-eyed woman can only watch their strange dynamic with cold disdain. As they eat, the boss's worries linger, while Huang Kwang-ho finds a bone in his boneless chicken. The betrayal is real. Meanwhile, in a grand hall, a new figure addresses his followers. The leader of the power-worshipping cult thanks his disciples for their hard work. He claims their meeting must be the will of the gods, a tired formality. The cult leader repeats the phrase, his expression unreadable in the dim light. But the man in white drops the pretense, lighting a cigarette to cut to the chase. He demands to know why the cult has crossed into his territory. He flicks his ash, feigning surprise at such a blatant and knowing trespass. The cult leader responds, suggesting there should be a code of honor between them. The man in white approaches, asking what he's implying and mentioning he's heard rumors. His expensive shoes click on the floor, a quiet assertion of his status. He states the rumor plainly, that this cult worships nothing but raw power. And since he embodies that power, he declares, they will listen to him. Well, that's one way to start a negotiation. The cult leader concedes the point, admitting his followers do indeed worship power. He explains that if the man in white truly has power, then his words hold weight. The man in white drops his cigarette, grinding it out under his expensive shoe. The cult leader smirks, calling it a roundabout way of agreeing to obey. With a final warning, the man in white tells them to stay out of his business. But as he leaves, one of the followers asks which god he serves. The cult leader scoffs, claiming any being that offers blessings is a god to him. His face contorts into a manic grin as he defines a god as anything that makes him money. Well, at least he's honest about his priorities. The man in white looks back, dismissing such a belief as utterly foolish. The cult members depart, leaving the man in white alone in the vast, empty hall. The cult leader claims he tried to be reasonable, but his guest was simply too oblivious. A follower agrees with a wide, unsettling grin, his eyes gleaming with fanaticism. A new figure in black robes addresses the room, declaring that insight is a refuge for the weak. The older leader gives a simple, chilling order to his followers. Deal with it. The robed man sheds his top, preaching that gods are always near, even when unfelt. He insists their existence is undeniable as a dark energy begins to fill the hall. In a sudden burst of motion, one of the followers lunges forward to attack. The preacher blocks the blow, adding that gods, unlike men, will never betray you. His hand blurs as he turns on another disciple, ready to deliver his own blessing, and he proves his point with a devastating strike, a brutal test of faith. The follower's glasses shatter as the preacher's fist connects with his face. Another disciple is lifted off his feet, caught in an iron grip. The preacher declares that all power is the same as the cult leader scrambles away in terror. He can only stammer the words, recognizing this as a form of divine punishment. Surrounded by fallen bodies, he screams at the preacher, questioning his lack of fear, but his words are drowned out by his own cold sweat of terror. A masked figure grabs him from behind, forcing him to pay attention to the sermon. The preacher finishes his lesson, speaking of a God that will never betray him. The terrified leader is forced to look up at the man who embodies this brutal faith. The preacher looms over him, offering one last chance to see the light, or else. He tells the terrified man to pray to whatever God he believes in for salvation. The preacher leans in close, his sermon delivered through violence, not words. His masked face is a cold, unreadable void, devoid of any mercy. The cult leader can only stare up at the instrument of his brutal punishment. He finally breaks, begging for mercy, and the preacher agrees that's the right idea. With a terrifying grin, he explains that prayer is the only way to reach a god. Meanwhile, back at the office, the party is in full swing, and the boss is having second thoughts. She slumps over the table, wondering why her desperate efforts to help are being ignored. She just wants a little acknowledgement for trying to keep him from getting killed. A totally reasonable request. Huang Kwang-ho calmly pours her a drink, telling her he sees her efforts and that she should rest. The yellow-eyed woman watches with a deadpan expression as the boss drinks herself into oblivion. She coldly suggests that getting this drunk is the only way to forget her recent humiliation. But the boss's eyes are filled with a mix of shame and drunken frustration. She finally breaks, chugging the bottle as the tears and sobs overwhelm her. The yellow-eyed woman questions this, but Huang Kwang-ho tells her to let it be. He explains that this is exactly why she needs to eat, drink, and get some rest. And just like that, she's passed out, finally getting the break she so desperately wanted. The next morning arrives, bright and entirely too cheerful. She wakes up with a killer hangover, groaning for a glass of water. She stumbles out of the room, trying to get her bearings in the quiet apartment. She wakes with a dry gasp, the night's events a blurry memory. But despite the drinking, she feels surprisingly refreshed from her deep sleep. A strange, familiar scent fills the air, the smell of the ocean. And from the corner of the room, the yellow-eyed woman watches her stir. She opens the door to a stunning, sunlit view of the sea. The fresh air explains her peaceful rest, but not where she is. They're far from the city, standing on the edge of a bright blue ocean. Her mind struggles to catch up with the sudden change of scenery. The smell of grilling seafood only adds to her growing confusion. Because Huang Kuang-ho has decided the party's over, and it's time to fight again. She explodes in a rage, accusing him of kidnapping her in her sleep. But he just smirks, reminding her they have a match to prepare for. His smug grin says it all. This was part of the plan from the start. He tells her she should be grateful, while the yellow-eyed woman watches on. She realizes he got her drunk on purpose, a fact his new partner coldly confirms. The sheer audacity of it all sends her into a spiral of frustration and rage. She panics, realizing she left her work and family completely in the dark. With no other option, she makes a break for it, trying to escape. She turns back, screaming that she's heading back to the city with or without them. But as the sun sets, her anger fades, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She learns there are no boats off the island, trapping her in this seaside vacation. He leans in with a triumphant grin, confirming he knew all along. The yellow-eyed woman watches the exchange, her gaze sharp and calculating. She claims innocence, pinning the entire kidnapping scheme on Huang Kuang-ho, but she does admit to handling her work, telling her to just call her family. How thoughtful. The boss can only sigh, completely outmaneuvered and exhausted. With a defeated slump, she finally accepts her fate. She agrees to go along with it, and he praises her for finally seeing reason. But the yellow-eyed woman cuts in, adding a condition of her own. She reminds him his only goal is to set a record, regardless of the details. The boss lays down her own terms for this forced vacation. She'll forgive the kidnapping if they promise to keep a low profile. But Huang Kuang-ho asks why she's so on edge, wondering if it's about the cult. The question hangs in the air, her face frozen in the shadows. Her eyes widen, betraying the genuine fear she's trying to hide. She glances around the restaurant, her paranoia painting everyone as a potential threat. She suddenly grabs his face, trying to silence him before he says more. Her hand covers his mouth, a desperate attempt to control the situation. She insists he can't fall for their act, her composure completely shattered. But he just calls her a scaredy cat, dismissing the people around them as simple tourists. He whispers back, dismissing her fears about the power-worshipping cult. But she insists their fanaticism is exactly what makes them so unpredictable. The yellow-eyed woman tries to broker peace, focusing on the record. She asks about a training facility, already planning their next move. Huang Kuang-ho finally agrees to keep a low profile until the match is over. As they eat, he remarks that they can finally communicate with each other. He then calls her out for her constant worrying, lecturing her on risk versus reward. But she sees this as a high-risk, low-return situation on an island full of fanatics. He holds up his phone, reminding her they're not cut off from the world. Modern problems require modern solutions, I guess. And then he promises to protect her, a simple vow that completely changes her expression. The sound of the waves washes over the shore in the quiet of the night. She stands alone, questioning if her constant worrying is holding them back. She admits that without Huang Kuang-ho's fearless attitude, they'd be nowhere. His recklessness is a double-edged sword, but it's one that cuts a path forward. For the first time, she wonders if her own judgment has been the problem all along. A flicker of doubt crosses her mind, a seed of a new perspective. But she can't shake the fear, knowing their high-risk strategy can't last forever. She knows that fanatics don't play by any rules, a lesson she'd rather not learn firsthand. Huang Kuang-ho finds her on the beach, asking why she's out in the cold. She turns the question back on him, sensing he came out just for her. Her eyes widen as a sudden, chilling realization dawns on her. Huang Kuang-ho looks down at his phone, noting that he can't get a signal. He questions why it's not working, a detail that seems strangely significant. As they walk along the shore, he keeps trying to connect, completely unaware, and in an instant, the night is torn apart by a massive explosion. The blast throws his boss to the sand as he calmly finishes his thought. The ship they were walking towards is now a raging inferno. So much for a low profile. They can only watch as the flames consume the vessel, lighting up the night sky. His boss screams in pure, unadulterated terror at the sudden violence. The fire rages on, a clear and brutal message sent from their enemies. Huang Kuang-ho tells her to get inside, his voice calm despite the inferno. He promises to figure out what's going on, urging her to find safety. But her panic finally boils over as she reminds him that she told him so. He tries to calm her, but she refuses, her voice low and defiant. She declares that she's done taking orders from him or anyone else. A memory flashes of a brutal street fight, a scene of pure chaos. She rises to her feet, her shadow falling over him as she makes a threat. Her eyes glow with a strange power as she vows to force him into submission. Because the most certain way to persuade someone isn't with reason. It's by using a much more direct and often painful method of communication. Her scream tears through the night, a raw and desperate sound. She laughs maniacally, her eyes glowing as she declares power is the only answer. She believes that subduing others with brute force is the only true way. She regrets ever trying to reason with words, blaming herself for being weak. If persuasion fails, she thinks, then coercion is the only path left. But her grand plan ends with her unconscious on the sand. So much for that. As Huang Kuang-ho tries to wake her, the yellow-eyed woman watches impatiently. The boss finally stirs, groaning in pain as he confirms she's awake. He explains that she attacked him, leaving him no choice but to knock her out. She stares back in disbelief with no memory of why she would ever attack him. The yellow-eyed woman explains that the boss was likely under the influence of an ability. She reveals that ever since the explosion, the entire island has erupted into chaos. The streets are filled with people mindlessly attacking each other, their eyes glowing with madness. It's a mass hypnotic suggestion, stripping everyone of their reason and turning them into puppets. She finds it strange that an ability of this magnitude could be used so broadly. But Huang Kuang-ho points out the flaw. Why are the three of them immune to the chaos? The first possibility is that the user can pick and choose their targets with precision. But as his boss looks on in horror, the woman reveals the second, more chilling option. A flash of memory reveals a familiar, powerful figure radiating a similar energy. She suggests they're immune because they've already been exposed to this power, the Paul Rani terminus. The boss struggles to believe it, but the woman confirms this is the nature of a black rank ability. Huang Kuang-ho's eyes narrow as he listens to her explanation. She calls it a power that stands at the apex of all others as another victim succumbs to the madness. But Huang Kuang-ho doesn't hesitate, dropping the first attacker with a single decisive blow. The boss looks around in horror, realizing they're surrounded by a horde of controlled civilians. Men, women, and children, all with the same vacant, glowing eyes, stare down at their prey. She can only stammer out a thank you, still reeling from the sudden attack. But Huang Kuang-ho is already on the move, sprinting away from the scene. He yells back that he saved her once and now she's on her own. Chivalry is truly dead. He shouts for them to meet him back at the hotel, leaving them to navigate the chaos alone. The two women are left alone on the beach as the horde of glowing-eyed locals closes in. Their faces are twisted into grotesque smiles, their eyes glowing with mindless rage. The yellow-eyed woman gets to her feet, clearly unimpressed by this turn of events. The boss clenches her fist, her terror quickly turning into pure, unadulterated fury. With no other choice, she turns and runs for her life, the mob hot on her heels. The two women sprint through the chaos, trying to escape the mindless horde. The boss screams, her frustration and fear finally reaching a breaking point. She screams Huang Kuang-ho's name, her voice echoing through the resort complex. She reminds him of his promise to protect her, a promise he just casually broke. So much for that vow. She demands he take responsibility for kidnapping her and leading them straight into this mess. The yellow-eyed woman's gaze is sharp, her patience clearly wearing thin. But the boss is far less composed, her body giving out as she runs. Huang Kuang-ho glances back, his expression a mix of annoyance and concern. He screams at her to keep moving, but she's doubled over, completely spent. She gasps for air, clutching a cramp in her side, having hit her physical limit. All that office work did not prepare her for a zombie apocalypse. The yellow-eyed woman looks on, her expression unreadable but far from sympathetic. Her eyes narrow, calculating their chances in this increasingly dire situation. And behind them, the mindless, glowing-eyed horde continues its relentless advance. The yellow-eyed woman urges her to get up, knowing they're just seconds from being overrun. With a frustrated sigh, Huang Kuang-ho scoops up his boss, forced to carry her to safety. So much for being on her own. Still being carried, she accuses him of leaving her behind only to return too late. He denies it, reminding her he simply told her to run to safety. But she screams back, her logic frayed by fear, insisting they should have stayed together. The yellow-eyed woman's gaze sharpens, her patience finally at its end. And with a sudden shove, she sends the boss flying from Huang Kuang-ho's back. The boss tumbles across the pavement, her rant cut short by a very direct form of feedback. She gasps for air, the shock of the betrayal written all over her face. Looking up, she sees them standing over her, asking if he's really going to fight. He confirms it, explaining these are just civilians controlled by an enemy's power. The yellow-eyed woman calls him out, suggesting his earlier retreat was because he couldn't win without harming them. He stares down the horde, admitting it's too late to run, but a new plan is forming. But he corrects himself. It's not so much a plan as it is the only option left. And from the shadows, the true mastermind appears, his eyes glowing with the same purple madness. His boss can only watch on, bruised and utterly lost in the chaos. The puppet master laughs, claiming the ability has scrambled his own brain as well. With a single stomp, he unleashes his mindless army upon them. The controlled civilians surge forward, a single unified wave of violence. Their faces are twisted into manic grins, their eyes glowing with borrowed power. And leading the charge is another fighter, his own will completely erased by the puppet master. But Huang Kuang-ho stands his ground, a lone figure against a sea of red-tinged madness. The puppet's face twists into a mask of pure, mindless rage. And Huang Kuang-ho answers with a whirlwind of precise, non-lethal strikes. He moves through the crowd, disabling them one by one without causing serious harm. But the sheer number of opponents begins to take its toll on him. And soon, the entire horde lies unconscious on the rain-slicked pavement. The yellow-eyed woman can only stare, questioning his sanity after that display. She reminds him that he just took down an entire town of innocent people. He just curses his enemies for forcing his hand, already planning his lawsuit. Because of course he is. But she points out the obvious flaw. No one will ever believe his story. Nearby, his boss can only groan, still reeling from the chaos of the night. The yellow-eyed woman's expression is grim, her patience worn thin by the night's events. She urges them to move, knowing the unconscious civilians won't stay down forever. They retreat to the relative safety of their hotel room, the chaos left behind. The boss is out cold, the stress and exhaustion finally catching up to her. The yellow-eyed woman watches over her, while Huang Kuang-ho stands on the balcony. He notes the puppets are active again, now turning their mindless rage on each other. She questions his unnerving calm, asking if he somehow predicted this entire mess. But he scoffs at the idea, saying no one can predict the actions of fanatics. She insists they need to find the source and understand the cult's true motives. But Huang Kuang-ho questions why they should get involved, suggesting they just wait for rescue. He brushes off her concerns, turning his attention to the hotel's mini-fridge. He finds it well-stocked, a small victory in a night of total chaos. The boss, still recovering, points out they have enough food to wait it out. But Huang Kuang-ho brings up the bigger problem, the aftermath of his actions. He just assaulted an entire town of ordinary, mind-controlled people. It was an act of indiscriminate violence regardless of the circumstances. She argues that no one will believe their story about a mass hypnosis ability. But Huang Kuang-ho flatly refuses, seeing no reason to help the DK League. Outside, the chaos continues as the puppets tear each other apart. He'll just watch the carnage unfold until help arrives. A solid, foolproof plan. His boss begs him to intervene, but the yellow-eyed woman's cold response cuts through the air. Huang Kuang-ho's expression is a mask of pure indifference. He takes a drink, confirming he has no intention of helping the League. The yellow-eyed woman agrees, stating it's not their job to clean up this mess. But she adds a crucial detail, a single word that changes everything. And just like that, she has his complete and undivided attention. She explains that if they wait for rescue, the entire match will be canceled. With the island in chaos, there's no way the fight can proceed as planned. And his record-breaking climb to the top will all be for nothing. A truly devastating thought. From her bed, the boss realizes this was the woman's plan all along. Huang Kuang-ho's lips curl into a smirk as he confirms her unspoken accusation. He admits that this was his plan all along, his eyes glowing with cold resolve. The boss chimes in, declaring she can't ignore people in crisis. A sudden burst of heroic spirit, I guess.